Hello, welcome. I'm Sean, I'm a psychotherapist, and today I want to talk about critical mothers, really so that I can help you understand why your mother might have been critical to you as a child, because of course this has such big effects long term. It really impacts our self-esteem, our sense of self. It can lead to a lot of self-criticism as an adult, perfectionism. It can be a precursor for OCD. It can really shape how we understand ourselves and our ability to be human and just to make mistakes, really. It kind of can lead us to walk on eggshells through our adult life. So let's talk a bit about what makes some mothers critical. And I do want to say that this is not the same as a mum who is, sometimes she's having a bad day and she'll make a kind of a bit of a negative comment or something. Really, here I'm talking about fairly persistent, consistent criticism. This could be about if the child maybe seems to underperform in their mother's eyes in some way, whether that's an exam or in a social situation, they're too shy, their mother criticizes them for that or something of that nature. But this can also just be generally that there's this position taken by the mother of scrutinizing what the child's doing, of constantly watching what they're doing and commenting negatively on it. And when you experience this, which I'm assuming you will have if you're here watching this video, then you'll know how painful that is and you'll know how much that can affect how you perceive yourself and other people. So the first thing I want to talk about is a psychological concept called projective identification. And basically what this means is that people who are particularly A, have a history of trauma, and B, have no history of resolving that trauma. So mothers who are maybe narcissistic, just quite toxic in how they interact with their other people or with their children in particular, they will likely have lots about them that they hate. So lots of qualities that are probably very universal, normal, perfectly fine qualities, very human qualities, that they, for one reason or another, probably because of their own childhood, have not been able to accept in themselves. And what they then do as a way to cope with this, as a way to manage this self-hatred and these feelings, is they kind of, psychologically speaking, they kind of place this trait in someone else, in this case in their child. And it is often with their children, because obviously children are much more vulnerable, dependent. Children don't really have the choice to up and leave as other adults do. And so they'll kind of place this trait in other people. They will start seeing this trait in other people. I'll use the example of being lazy. Okay, so if your mother wasn't able to accept the part of her that sometimes wasn't motivated, sometimes wanted to do nothing, the part of her that wanted to rest, if she wasn't able to make peace with that because she maybe had beliefs and messages around always needing to be productive and to be doing something and so on, then she may have kind of projected that trait of laziness into you as a child. And the reason that this happens, this projective identification process happens, is because then you can attack that part of you when it's in somebody else. Now, I know this is all a bit abstract, but bear with me. I hope it's making sense. So it's about kind of, you're projecting out this trait. So let's say she's then would have maybe perceived in you laziness. Now, I mean, that's a horrible word in itself, isn't it? But it may well have been that, like every other human, sometimes you didn't want to do much. Sometimes you needed to rest. Sometimes you were tired. Sometimes you just couldn't be bothered. Sometimes you weren't motivated. That's all completely fine. But it's not fine for a mother who hasn't been able to accept those parts of herself, because that is a universal human experience. And so then she would have been able to attack that laziness in you once she'd projected it into you in an attempt to destroy it, if you like. Now, what happens, of course, in the process is that you as a human being and you as her child get caught in the crossfire. Actually, what's happening is she's at war with herself. The whole time she's criticizing you, berating you, saying you're too lazy, you're not getting enough done, you're not being motivated enough. She's at war with herself, but you are the casualty of that war. And first, I want to say I'm so sorry that that happened to you, because it's so painful and it shouldn't have happened. But hopefully this is bringing a little bit of clarity as to why that might have happened. So next up, I want to talk about the fact that, I'm just having a look at my notes, the fact that your mother may have learned that in order to be successful, in order to get things done, in order to improve yourself, you have to be critical of yourself. She may have experienced this type of parenting that sent these false messages that in order to grow or become better or to get anywhere in life, you have to be hard on yourself. And this is a kind of quite a typical traditional parenting approach. And also the approach of emotionally immature parents who really don't understand really how humans kind of function best. And so if your mother thought that there might have been some part, and I'm not going to go down the route of she was doing her best for you, she was trying to help you out, it's more just that she had unconsciously linked criticism with something positive, I suppose. Even though that's incredibly counterintuitive, even though we know that actually criticism does nothing but drain our energy and make things much harder and reduce our resilience, we know that, but she didn't know that. And so she may have been criticizing you because that's what she learnt to do with herself, and therefore that's all she kind of knows how to do. And the last point I want to make is that she might have gotten to a point where criticizing herself is how she learnt to connect. Criticizing other people rather, is how she learnt to connect. That might have been her experience in her own childhood with her own parents. Now, this can be a tricky one because often grandparents, by the time they reach the age of being grandparents, not always, but often their traits soften. They're no longer in survival mode because they're not in that very challenging period of life of kind of actively raising a family or actively raising young children. And so you might think to yourself, well, I know my grandma's not critical or my grandpa's not critical. Maybe they're not now, but maybe they were then. Maybe they were when they were raising your mother. And so maybe she learned that this is how you get connection, how you give connection. If she was criticized a lot by her parents, then maybe that's just how she came to understand how relationships function, that this is kind of what you do. You pick out what's not okay and you tell them and you name it and you pick at it until it gets better. Or at least you try to do that. And that is how you connect. Maybe that was her sort of thinking based on her own childhood, and that is of course her own trauma that is then maybe not recognized as trauma. Maybe she doesn't think of it as traumatic, maybe she doesn't even recognize that it happened, but then you found yourself on the receiving end of that because she was so used to connecting through criticizing. And this is probably in truth how she connects with herself as well, is by criticizing herself. That is somehow a kind of strongly embedded part of her narrative with herself as well. So hopefully that's been helpful. Do drop in the comments anything else that you'd want me to talk about relating to the mother wound. I talk a lot about this. This is one of the areas that I really focus on, mother wound and emotionally immature parents. So if you are healing your mother wound at the moment, do pop anything in the comments that you'd like me to address directly, and I will do that for you next time. Take care.